Hi, I'm Simon. Thanks for tuning in to The Ordinary Filmmaker. If you're new here, click subscribe so you'll get notification of new videos like this one, so you won't miss out on any news, reviews, or tutorials. And all the links to everything I talk about in this video, including gear discussed, are placed in the description down below, along with my affiliate links. So here we are, it's Saturday, time for another Q&A video. But the settings changed, right? I'm back over here. I haven't shot here for about 3 weeks. I'm normally right over there or over there, and the reason being, it's 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I had some issues this morning, and I wanted to fix it. I wanted to see if I could solve the problem. I'll tell you what those were at the end of this video in a behind the scenes, but I don't want to give things away just in case this didn't work out either. All right, before I get into the next question, or the first question, let me just set the scene. I'm giving away the Canon EOS R5 full-frame mirrorless camera once I reach 100,000 subscribers. Now, to make this a lot more entertaining, because only one person can win, I want to increase your odds. And to do so, periodically in videos, what I will do is I'll hide something in the video. I'll maybe put it in a tree, maybe I'll put it in a bush, but I'm going to hide an object, and what I will do is I'll give you a hint, I'll give you some clues in a pinned comment for that video. And I'm doing one in this video here. Nothing's hidden right now, but I will be hiding an object. I will be hiding it in this video. Probably, well, I won't tell you when because I want you to watch the whole video. The first person to identify the exact item, be descriptive, and its location will win an entry. Only one person per video can win an entry. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. Oh, one more thing you should be aware of. I'm actually filming this in 4K 30 C-Log, so that should help the dynamic range. We'll see how this turns out. All right, so let's get into our first question. Isuli Ben asks, Simon, does the R5 camera entry entitle everyone that sees the mysterious object or just the one person who sees it? It'll be the first person. Now, if I hide more than one object, then more than one person will have a chance, because let's say I hide 2 objects and one person identifies both of them. Well, I'll only give that person one entry, and then the next person to identify the other object would get the second entry. So it's only one entry for video. Otherwise, this would be just an administrative nightmare. But if you have any other questions, put them in the comment section down below, and I'll get back to you guys. Amy Worrell asks, what's the competition to the R5 in the category of excellent stills and good video? Is there anything from other manufacturers that does better 4K than the R5's non-HQ mode, e.g. less limited by heat, higher image quality, etc., but doesn't compromise on photography? Well, that's a really good question, but the one thing we have to keep in mind is that the R5 is really the first full-frame camera that's been released this year. Nikon hasn't released anything, Sony hasn't released anything, and Panasonic hasn't released anything. Panasonic released their stuff, I think it was last year and the year before, or mostly last year. So Canon really kind of has the latest tech there when it comes to professional grade camera for photography. This camera is really great. I'd say it's the best right now in terms of image processing, in terms of color accuracy, IBIS. You know, I would say it's the best, but Nikon's going to be coming out with the Z8 shortly, and that could very easily beat the R5. We don't know in terms of who else is coming out with a camera. Oh yeah, and Sony. So Sony's going to be coming out with the A7S III, although that's a video-centric camera. It doesn't really fit your question, but they are supposed to be releasing the A7 IV later in the 4th quarter, so that could potentially give the R5 a run for its money. But the one thing I really want to couch you on thinking about here, Amy, is which camera gives you the best capabilities that you need. I think if you're happy with the R5, then get the R5. Yes, it does have overheating, but is it going to overheat in the modes that you need? Now, for me, I did my own capability analysis, and I found that most likely, or most of the times, all I needed was 4K 30 or 1080, and there's no overheating in those modes. Now, I do like 4K HQ, and I wish it didn't overheat there, but I don't film 4K HQ for the channel. I only film 4K HQ for my run and gun work, and so far there, it hasn't been an issue, and I don't really expect it to be. But I think Canon, I really wish Canon would get rid of that overheating in the 4K HQ, because I think that would just make it a stellar camera and be very hard to beat. But thanks for the question. Frosty asks, do you think Canon should make a video-centric camera like the A7S III? Do you think Canon should make the USB-C capable of powering a flash drive to change the heat issues? Excellent question, Frosty. I really wish Canon had gone the same route as Panasonic with the S series of cameras. They came up with the S1, which was kind of a hybrid camera between photo and video, kind of like the R5. But then they came out with the S1R, which was a dedicated high megapixel camera. And then Late last year, they came up with the S1H, which was video-centric. It sacrificed photo for the sake of video, and it's a very, very powerful camera. The only problem I have with that camera is its autofocus. So yes, I do wish Canon had taken a slightly different approach. I would have loved them to copy the S1 model, but they didn't. Now, in terms of providing, what was the question? Can you make sure? Yeah, I wish they did do that with the USB-C cable. Only time will tell if that's something they will do or not. I think they should. You do, obviously. We'll just have to wait and see. Thurandu asks, Panasonic GH5 versus the Sony a7 III for a small-time YouTube that shoots mostly inside a home studio. What are the pros and cons of the GH5? I think the GH5 is perfectly suited for shooting YouTube, especially in a home studio. The only real issue that I have with the GH5 that a lot of people have is autofocus. But in a home studio, you can pull focus manually and it no longer becomes an issue. So I think that's really good. It does have a micro four thirds sensor. You have to determine if that's an issue for you or not. The a7 III provides a full frame sensor. So you've got different depths of fields, you've got different low light considerations. I'm not saying the GH5 is bad, just saying things just function differently with a full frame sensor versus a micro four thirds sensor. So I can't really tell you which is best for you in that regard, because you'd have to tell me what the capabilities you're looking for in a camera. But I would say that the GH5 is definitely a terrific camera. And it's also good for vlogging too. The a7 III is going to be heavier, whereas the GH5 is good for vlogging. You just want to, I would have a big depth of field so you don't have to worry about the autofocus when you're vlogging, but if you're doing any vlogging. But I think, I don't know, I really kind of like the GH5, but let's put a pin on that one. Panasonic's going to be announcing the GH6 pretty soon, we expect within the next couple of months, so I would wait for that. Even if you're going to get the GH5, you'll probably get it at a bit of a price break. Cognitive Evolution asks, maybe it's a bit early, but do you think Canon will release an R1? If so, can you speculate on what features it might have? Dual CFR Express slots, a more effective way to handle heat, etc. Yeah, they're definitely going to do it. Canon's not going to stop releasing a 1 series camera. They just released one. It was the 1DX Mark III back in January. Canon generally releases a new 1 series camera every 4 years in time for the Olympics. I don't know what's going to happen with their next cycle because I don't know what's happening with the Olympics. But I would expect we're probably at least 3 years off before we see the next 1 series camera. And I do strongly believe it's going to be a mirrorless. It's going to be the R1. Now, Canon could choose to release both a mirrored and mirrorless. That will depend on demand and the health of the company. In terms of features, well, I think it's going to replicate what you have with the 1DX Mark III. But I think in terms of speed, frames per second, I think we're going to see it push past 20 frames per second because you don't have that mechanical mirror in the way, you don't have all that stuff, and I think based on bandwidth alone, theoretically you could push up to 40 frames per second at 20 megapixels, or you could push the megapixels and still push the frames per second up to 30, and that's we'll just have to wait and see. I don't want to speculate too much because 4 years is an awful long time in technology. Stop the FOMO asks, on the R5, if filming 4K 60 on an external monitor for an extended period, then jumping to 8K, how much record time is reduced due to overheating? Okay, this one's very difficult to answer, and I can't give you an exact for many reasons. When I first set up this camera, I probably spent about 10 to 15 minutes trying to get things lined up, setting the props. These are all props here because I wanted to give you guys a good idea of depth of field in terms of detail and all that, and I needed to add more things to the scene. It took about 10 to 15 minutes, and that is causing your camera to heat up even if you're not recording. So then if you shoot 4K 60 for 10 minutes, based on Canon's own guidelines, you've got what, maybe 20 minutes left before it could overheat, but it's already been on. So then if you then switch to 8K, you might only have 2 minutes, you might have 5, it's really hard to tell, and of course, it depends on your ambient temperature. And mine right now is 81 degrees at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So very tough to answer. Now, if that's really a concern, then maybe what you want to consider is getting an external recorder like the Ninja 5, removing the SD cards, putting in a dummy battery, then record as much 4K 60 as you want, and then switch over to 8K and then see what kind of limits you have. But, you know, it's really hard to say. No Life, that channel No Life, they did a test, and it was a rather limited one, mostly testing 4K HQ. Although he is planning on doing some more testing, I'd keep an eye on his channel. I will, of course, update you guys on any results that he puts out there because I think that no life is helping the sales of these external recorders. I think for the ordinary filmmaker, this really isn't a concern. Like I said, 4K 30 and 1080 don't provide any overheating, and here I am shooting this video, which is going to be at least an hour long, and I'm shooting it in 81 degrees heat, and I don't have to worry about overheating issues. So if you are getting into more event type stuff where you're going to be shooting for an hour or two at a time, or you're going to be doing studio work like YouTube, then yes, you definitely want to consider an external recorder for more reasons than just overheating. You get to output Apple ProRes, and that'll save you hours right there, among many other things. So yeah, good question, but I'm sorry I couldn't give you a specific answer to that one. Do you think the Canon M50 Mark II will have 4K non-cropped? If this was a couple of years ago, I would say it's going to have 4K, but it's going to have probably a 1.7 crop or a 1.6 crop. But look at the R5 and the R6. Yes, there is a crop in some modes, but it's very minor, like a 1.07 or 1.1. It's very, very minor. And I know it's an expensive camera. It's a professional grade camera, but let's look at the 90D. It's an APS-C, it's a hobbyist camera, and it provides 4K non-crop, and it also provides 4K with a slight crop, providing extra detail. So looking at the 90D and looking at Canon's trend, I definitely think that it's likely that we'll see 4K. And if it does have a crop, I think it's going to be a minor crop, or it'll have no crop, full sensor readout with some caveats, and then an option to record 4K with a slight crop. Indy asks, now that the big guns have done their big reveals, how do you see your channel developing over the next 6 to 12 months? Do you feel that you'll be doing more in-depth reviews and maybe showing techniques if there's no juicy products being released this year? I'm always going to be aligned with my vision, and my vision, and let's see if I can remember the words to it, but my vision is to deliver camera reviews, content, content creation. I've kind of forgotten it, but essentially it's to deliver camera reviews, kit reviews, information on content creation, and you know, tips and tricks and hints and tutorials, and it's aimed at the ordinary filmmaker. The only difference that I've really, the focus where I've kind of shifted in the last 6 to 12 months, or 6 months, is that I prioritize news and rumors. So now that there's less news and rumors, that stuff won't get discussed as much. And what you've already noticed in the last couple of weeks, I'm doing a lot more videos on the capabilities of the R5. I'm planning on reviewing products like the R5, the A7S III. I did a tutorial yesterday on how to approach manual. You know, don't be afraid to shoot in manual. It's only gotten about 300 reviews, and that's the problem with tutorials. I don't like doing a lot of them because they just don't get reviews, and what I like to do is kind of put them at the end of another video to encourage people to look at them. But you know, the channel is going to shift a little bit. I don't see the vision shifting at all, but in terms of content, it really depends on what's coming out on the market. And as soon as I can get the R6 and the A7S III, I'm going to run through some very similar tests. Mirinda says, the A7 III is said to have 2 extra stops of dynamic range over the R5. How much of a difference can it make to the footage? Oh, it can make a huge difference. Take a look at the video I did a couple of nights ago. I actually released 2 nighttime videos. Watch the second one and watch it from the beginning, because what it's going to do is show you how well the camera performs in different modes with different settings, such as I go through ISO, I go through the f-stop, I go change the aperture from 1/30th to 1/60th. And then right at the end, I jump into C-Log, and you can see what a huge difference it makes. So you want to watch the first half of the video so you can see how I'm trying to make things work, and then you can see how C-Log just goes poof, and poof in a good way. So now if the Sony A7S III, another full-frame mirrorless camera, provides an extra stop or 2 of usable dynamic range, is it going to make a difference? Oh yes, it's going to make a huge difference, and it's going to look better than the Canon R5. So is it going to improve the footage? Definitely. But what you have to ask yourself is, what are the capabilities that you want in terms of low light? For example, if you're shooting indoors, the R5 is more than capable enough, and even outside. But if you're doing a lot of nighttime videography, then I'm thinking that the A7S III would be a better camera for you. And that's just me kind of guessing based on use cases and scenarios. All right, so you might notice there is a little bit of noise because it's the afternoon, it's hot, it's summer, people are outside playing, so do forgive me. I'm just going to run off this mic here, so the noises should be a little bit less, but I think we're halfway through and it's not going too badly. All right, let's move on to the next question. Chewy asks, do you think the R5 will be in short supply for a while, or will there be restock soon? Yeah, I think we're going to see a restricted supply for a good 5 to 6 months until we get past January. I have no idea what it's going to be like. I'm hearing from retailers in this country that we could see stock coming in August. Yeah, it's August already. And I'm also hearing from the US that we're going to see November, December. So I don't know. These are all rumors. We haven't heard anything from Canon. All I can say right now is stock is constrained, and I don't know when that's going to lighten up. The rumors aren't really saying anything other than we should hear from Canon shortly. Dotka asks, are you having any encounters with the dreaded IBIS Wobble? I would love to know at what focal length it stops occurring. Well, it sounds like a great test to do. So to answer your question, yes, I have encountered it a couple of times. The one time I didn't even realize it until I just, well, I guess being somebody who edits a lot, you tend to look for these things, but my wife was looking at it and didn't notice. So all I did is I just cropped in a little bit and it eliminated that, because most of the times I'm not filming right to the edge. I'm focusing on the subject, which is usually towards the center of the frame. And that lens that I was using was the 24 to 105, so I can tell you that it definitely does happen at 24 millimeters, but I can't tell you if I was at 24 millimeters at the time that I filmed that, so that's probably a good test for me to try at some other point. OJ Hansen says, I keep seeing more videos showing the R5 in 4K HQ. When recording externally to the Ninja 5 and there are no cards inside the camera, it takes 3 hours to overheat. Recovery cooldown time is 10 minutes or less, and then they go another 3 hours. How much of this is true? Wouldn't this solve the R5 overheating problem by just shooting externally for high-res 4K HQ and 8K video modes? Well, how much of it is true? Well, No Life put out the video, he ran the test, and I'm assuming that he's not lying to us. A lot of people have been watching this. I would expect there's other videos going to be coming out testing this, validating it. Essentially, he removed the storage cards and put in a dummy battery, and he was able to get up to 4 hours of recording in 4K HQ before overheating, and then he allowed anywhere from like a minute to 10 minutes of cooldown time, and then was able to go again. Now this works with 4K HQ. It might work with 4K 60, although he didn't test. It doesn't work with 8K because 8K doesn't export externally. However, I do have a source who says they're looking at testing 8K externally and will get back to me early next week to see if they were successful or not. So if that's the case, I will be doing an interview and this will be really exciting. But the key focus here is this is happening with 4K HQ and 4K 60. If you need to record an hour, 2 hours or more, then yes, this is something that will benefit you. But if you're like most ordinary filmmakers, this is probably not going to be an issue. And there's no need to get extra gear. I do love the idea of a Ninja 5. It would really help me on my channel side of things. But for my run and gun, it wouldn't. It does mean more settings. It does mean more kit. It does mean more things that can go wrong. It does mean there's more things that I can forget to set up properly. So I would rather spend a bit more on a camera body that's more capable than to patch things on later and make a bigger unit that's harder to travel with. And I think that's the case with most ordinary filmmakers. Jeffrey asks, what is Canon saying about lifting the 30-minute time limit? Nothing. Nothing at all. Zippo, zilch, www.zipit.com. They're silent. David asks, could you explain the ups and downs of using EFS lenses with the new R5 and R6 bodies? I have a number of these lenses and would like to continue to use them, particularly the 10 to 18 and the 55 to 250 STMs. Well, that's a very good question. Let's take a look at the pros first. Pros are, you've already got lenses. It's not going to cost you more than $100 to get the adapter, and you're going to get the same results on the R5 and the R6. So there's that. Also, there's a huge used market of EF and EFS glass. So there's that too. But be careful. If you're shooting video, lenses older than 3 to 4 years can have a very loud focus motor and might be slow, so keep that in mind. For photography, knock yourself out. It's not really an issue. All right, now let's take a look at some of the cons. You've got that crop factor, and I know this can be a benefit as well, but that crop factor that you had on your APS-C camera is going to be replicated on the EOS R5 and R6. And the other negative is the quality is just not going to take advantage of the R5 and R6. But again, if you've already got these lenses, well, that kind of reduces your cost of entry into a full-frame mirrorless camera. Use those lenses until you can afford to save up for some more expensive glass like the 24-105, which isn't that expensive, or the 24-240. Again, not that expensive, but the pros and cons here, they're really not too bad because you're already used to the quality of these lenses, so moving them over, get used to them, try out some RF glass, and you might get a little bit addicted. Like honestly, if you like the, what is it, the 55-250, you're really going to like the 24-240. I think you'll really love that one. Of course, when you do go to the R5 with native glass or the R6, you can simulate cropped mode, and you can, that 24-240 now gives you some incredible zoom capabilities. Srizhong asks, as an ordinary filmmaker, how much better is full frame 4K and APS-C 4K in terms of sharpness and noise? It's kind of like comparing a computer made today to a computer made 15 years ago. It's going to be faster, it's going to be better in most ways. So you're definitely going to have less noise. And I'll tell you my experience going from the 70D to the R5. It's left me completely bewildered in terms of the quality, the sharpness, the lack of noise, the fact that I can shoot at night, have the eye autofocus lock onto me from 10 feet away and not miss a beat. I think that is just truly remarkable. I'm just ecstatic over the differences. Color accuracy is better, focusing is better, ISO is better. You've got IBIS for the first time with Canon. You've got a much faster processor, the same as what's in the 1DX Mark III. And you have a lot of these features working hand in hand. So if you're taking photos at night, you don't have to worry about blurry images because IBIS is helping you out there. And plus you've got better low light performance, you've got better ISO response. So yeah, or another, it's like having a car too. If you have a 10-year-old car and you go get a new one, the difference is night and day. Mike asks, is there a difference using an SD card or a micro SD card via an adapter in a camera? Well, let me first say that if you're not using the sleeve, then there is no difference. If the micro SD card and the SD card have the exact same performance, they're both going to function as well. But here's what you want to do. If your camera takes micro, you want to use micro. If it takes the standard SD, you want to use the standard SD. Now, caveats here. If you're filming in 1080, the sleeve isn't going to get in the way. It's not going to cause a problem for you because it's not a very fast transfer rate. But if you're doing 4K, here's the potential issue you run in with that sleeve. It's not rated for speed. It's not designed to be in operation inside a camera, especially if you're doing 4K. It's really designed to take that micro card so you can put it into your computer to offload the images. So that's the way you want to look at the sleeve. Think of the sleeve as a way of getting the content out of your camera and into your computer. Don't think of it in terms of getting a micro SD card to work in a standard SD card slot, especially if you're shooting 4K, 4K 60, or any of the higher frame rates, because it could interfere with performance. And once again, it's just one other thing to go wrong or make you scratch your head over. German asks, where are you located? It seems like a beautiful and peaceful place. German, that's a great question. I actually live at 22 Coronation Street in, no, that's not my real address. And it's not that I don't trust you or any of my other viewers, it's that, well, it's not safe to put our information like that out on the internet so others can take advantage of us. But I can tell you that I do live in Ontario, Canada. It's about 83 degrees right now. There's no humidity. It's beautiful. It's mostly sunny. And I've got to say that I cheat a little bit with my videos. My property is only about 45 feet by 110 feet, but the previous owners did an incredible job with landscaping. I've got 5 full-size trees and a Japanese maple that's about 12 feet tall, which you see in a lot of my videos. Here I've cheated a little bit, so these plants are normally up on the deck, but I wanted to add a bit more depth to the video so that way you can see better, you can see the detail a bit better. It's more for academic purposes than trying to make my set look better. I try different angles. I shoot in that corner a lot. This morning I shot over there. I'm planning on shooting on the deck as well. And I've also shot, when it was raining, I shot in the front, overlooking the front of my property. But I do love it here. This is a beautiful place in the world. It's quite peaceful. We don't have too many issues, although when we do, my wife loves to tell me what they are. There's a lot of ideas of what Canada is like, that it's a very rugged country. There aren't many cities, and it's a lot of hinterland. It's a lot of open wilderness. And to be fair, there is an awful lot of open wilderness. In fact, just an hour north of here, that whole wilderness opens up, and you've got rocky outcrops, you've got bears, you've got deer, you've got all sorts of wildlife. And even where I live here in Ontario, I'm surrounded by Great Lakes on either side of me, and there's lots of other tiny lakes. It is just a beautiful part of the world. I think the people on the West Coast have it a little bit better because they've also got the mountains, and I think the Vancouver area, the coastal areas of Vancouver are truly beautiful, and where I would definitely like to retire to. But no, I'm thankful to what the previous owners have done. They really do help. They really did help make this just a beautiful place, and one of the reasons why I bought it. So look for some different angles. And so when I said I'm cheating, cameras can make things look better than they are. So by zooming in just right, by tightening in on the shot, you can change the whole feel of something. How many times have you looked behind the scenes of your favorite TV show and you can see a whole wide shot of the set and they go like, oh, well, that's it. It's like watching, for example, Star Trek. It looks amazing when you watch the TV show or a movie, but then when you see the set, it's like, oh, in a way, it kind of ruins it to some degree. But yeah, no, I love where I am. And German, I love the question, sort of completely knocking me off the puck of cameras and asking me something a little bit different. So thank you for that. It really kind of provides a bit more dynamic range to the conversation, if I can borrow that term. The Village Mayor said, I noticed the Panasonic S1H is a real contender. A full-frame 24.2 megapixel camera with full video and photo capabilities. And it has a fan to prevent overheating and is also weather sealed. But it's more than 1 kilogram, so it's hefty. Is this what the R5 should have become? I'm an ordinary filmmaker like your brother, so I'm tempted to buy the S1H if Canon fails to deliver me a camera soon. Any thoughts? Well, you told me you're the ordinary photographer, so if you're considering Panasonic, I would consider the S1H. It does photos very well, and it still has some really good video specs as well. And the biggest problem I had with the S1 series is the autofocus, but if you're primarily a photographer, that's really not that much of an issue for you. I think the S1H is more designed for video professionals, people who want to shoot, well, kind of like what I'm doing here, a good hour or so. They want to shoot internally or externally. They don't have to worry about autofocus. A lot of times you can be pulling focus manually. It's got all the right tools. It's got all the right features. Panasonic's incredible. Waveform's no problem. Zebra's no problem. You want an update? Here, we'll give you an update. Tell us what you want. We'll put it in the camera. They're very accommodating. The only area where they're not accommodating is in the depth from defocus autofocus system, which is the only thing it's the only problem I have with their camera. So take a look at that. They've come out with a lot of lenses, and because of the L-mount alliance, there's a lot of lenses to choose from, even though the cameras have only been out for a short period of time. But as always, identify what the capabilities you need in a camera are, and then pick the camera the best for you. Compare the R5 to the S1H, to the S1, and even the S1R, and buy the camera that is right for you. Beardo asks, don't you think Canon mirrorless should still be a larger size to reduce heating issues? Can you speak to Canon officials? Well, actually, I have a conference call Monday morning with Canon Japan and Canon Australia, as well as representatives of Canon USA, and we're going to talk about this in detail. Yeah, no, I wouldn't have believed that either. They don't listen to me. They do listen to me, but I'm not big enough that I'm going to be able to get the ears of the people needed to make these sorts of changes. And I'll be honest with you, even if I worked for Canon, for things like this to have an impact, we all have to call them, write in, produce videos. We have to create noise. We got 24 frames per second back in all those cameras they took it away from. And if we want to see the record times go, there is no tax, guys. That tax has gone. There's no requirement. There's no cost of eliminating record times. And I don't really see it cannibalizing Cinemaline because, well, it's a completely different product. You don't get the dynamic range. You don't get the go anywhere, any time of day shooting that you do with those cameras. So I just see it as a way of ruining the customer experience. It gets in the way of enjoying the cameras. Although I'll say using Camera Connect, which I'm looking at down here, I can see my record time. I can see a lot of the settings. and that really does help me. So I don't have to look at the flip screen there, and I don't like to look at it. It's always turned away because otherwise I'll start looking over here instead of looking at you. And occasionally I'll just look down, like when I do a question, I'll look down here and I'll see, okay, it's still eye locking on me. Things look pretty good. I'm pretty happy. The exposure does look pretty good here. I did let ISO float though. You've got to give, something's got to float. And if you lock the ISO, then the camera's going to float the exposure, and that looks way worse. So get the Camera Connect app. I swear by it. And when you record yourself in a video, if you're doing YouTube stuff, turn the screen around. Use it to frame yourself, but don't rely on it because it becomes a little less impersonal. And guys, I do apologize. I know I'm talking faster. The primary reason for that is I don't know when one of my neighbors is going to have a party and it's going to get loud and I'll stop filming. So I'm kind of rushing through this a little bit, so I do apologize for that. Anyhow, time for the next question. Dogda says, Simon, this is great news. Are you able to explain what a dummy battery is and how to use one and where to get one? Maybe in one of your weekly Q&A videos. Anyways, thanks for the info. Okay, so Dogda is referring to that video by No Life that shows 4 hours of record time in 4K HQ. So what a dummy battery does is it supplies power to the camera through the battery slot, and basically you plug it into an adapter and it's going to supply that power so you can record past 2 hours. That's how he's able to get the 4 hours of record time. Yes, there are other ways of doing this, but that's what he did. And I think he was also doing it to see if the battery provided any heat in a way to sort of mitigate that issue. So where do you get one? You can get them at B&H. They're really affordable. They're around $30. Check the reviews. But yeah, I haven't tried one, but I'm eager to try the Ninja 5 along with the dummy battery and no cards in it. So yeah, very good question. Jonathan Guy asks, any idea why the new Canon LP E6 NH battery is as scarce as the R5? No, I really don't. I do suspect it's related to everything that's going on. They're prioritizing products. I don't know what's happening with the R5 right now. We've heard a lot of rumors. I've heard from sources here that we're expecting more R5s in August, but then I'm hearing from the US that we're not going to get cameras till November or December. So I don't know why that is. I don't know if it's because of a supply issue. I don't know if it's because they want to better address the overheating. We just have rumors right now. We don't have anything concrete, and we don't have anything from Canon, and that's really what I'm kind of hoping to see right now, some sort of communication from Canon to try and indicate if we are having to wait till November, and then why on earth is that the case? What's going on? Our last question is from Densu. Would you please give me some information about astrophotography with the R5? I would appreciate it very much. Yeah, I've got a lot of information for you, but I'm not going to lie to you. This is not information that I've developed myself. A gentleman by the name of Ian Robinson has a channel, and it's called Ian Robinson IR Tours. And he does a lot of videos on astrophotography, and I include the moon in that. I know I'm going to get some hate mail for this. It includes the moon and includes shooting the Milky Way, and to shoot each of those objects requires a different set of kit and a different set of settings. So everything I give you here is actually coming from Ian. Ian sent me an email yesterday, and because I asked for help. After watching this video, go ahead and visit his channel. I've got the link in my description down below. And Ian will talk you through how to shoot these things and how to edit them as well. So Ian does a really good job, and congratulate Ian too. He's on the verge of hitting 1,000 subscribers, and he might have already done it by now, but if not, give him a help out. All right, so let's take a look at how to shoot the moon. So you might be surprised by this, but you can actually shoot the moon using that 800mm and a 2x converter. Yes, this will give you the equivalent of an f/22 because of the 2x not only multiplies the 800mm, but also the f-stop as well, or the aperture. But you can easily compensate for this, according to Ian, by bumping up the ISO to around 1600, and that should produce some really good moonshots for you. So now, unfortunately, it looks like I'm going to have to go out and buy the 800mm. Oh, I wish I was wealthy. Or I wish I had more subscribers so I could get this stuff and be able to test it as soon as it comes out. Or in the case of people like Peter McKinnon, just get it sent to you ahead of time so you can test it out. But anyhow, let's go on to the Milky Way. So for the Milky Way, you're going to need a fast lens. I would recommend, or Ian recommends, the Sigma 20mm f1.4. You want the shutter speed to 20 seconds, minimum 15 if possible. the aperture at f2, and set your ISO to 1000. Use focus peaking and use manual focus. And the one other thing, or two other things you really want to have, you're going to have to use a tripod. You don't want to be putting the camera on a railing or something. You want to have a good tripod for this. But you also want to use something, a tool to remotely control the camera. And what I highly recommend, I've bought gadgets before, but this works so well. It's flawless with the R5, and it's Canon's own free app, Camera Connect. Not Canon Camera Connect, it's actually called Camera Connect, because if you try searching for Canon Camera Connect in the App Store, it's a little harder to find. What I love about this is that it actually shows you a live view of what's going on, but it also allows you to change the settings as well. It shows you where the focus is, if it's using eye focus or face or head detection. So that's very, very handy. So you can take your shots, you can take your video, because if you try and take the pictures using the camera, when you press the button, you're going to cause it to vibrate. You're going to create some problems, so you don't want to do that. You might as well use the free app. It will work on your phone, but I do highly recommend Apple's iPad, the 10-inch one, and just get the cheapest version. You don't really need those expensive ones or even the iPad Pro. And the iPad Pro becomes big enough that it becomes a little harder to travel with. So a great question. But again, thank you, Ian. Thank you very much, Ian, for helping me out with this question. You do a much better job than me, and I do hope to do some astrophotography coming up in the fall. Hopefully I can get myself the 800mm and a 2x converter. That's going to set me back a bit, isn't it? There's so much to get. But guys, I just want to take a moment here, be serious, and say a big thank you. You guys have humbled me significantly. I didn't realize how much you guys cared until I had my surgery about 3 weeks ago. I was stunned by the amount of outpouring of get well and genuine concern for my health, and telling me to, Simon, stop filming, go to bed, make sure you eat. I'm very much empathic. I understand why you're saying this. I understand the good intentions behind it, and it's very much appreciated. But look at my videos. Look at the number of comments that are provided. And these aren't just like the video, sub to me. These are in-depth comments. These are good comments. These are comments that help the community learn a bit more. And I'm very much appreciative of the community that I've helped create. And I say that I've helped create. I couldn't have done it without you guys. I do curate. I do go through anybody who's swearing or using language against people, or they're just being cruel and mean to others. I don't tolerate that. That's not this type of channel. I want you guys to feel safe here. Basically, anything we talk about in small talk, I'm perfectly fine with that in the conversation. I don't want us to get into politics and religion and things that are very sensitive to people, because this is a hobby. And like my backyard, my garden, it's a safe place. So I'd just like to say again, thank you so much. I really do appreciate the effort you put into just watching my videos, liking my videos, subscribing, commenting, and engaging and helping others. I've seen it before where I've given an answer like I have in this video, and I either missed something or I didn't give enough information to where it was almost borderline on a half-truth. Not that I was trying to mislead, but I left out something very significant. And I saw like a whack of 11 comments, and you know, some people might be upset by that, but not me. I was humbled by that, to see that you guys are helping each other. So that's very much appreciated. All right, now I want to talk about the problem I'm having, and it's happened in every Q&A video that I've shot. I've shot over there in the corner where I've got the Japanese maple and a lot of the other shrubs and the fern, and over here this morning when I shot in front of the cucumbers and tomatoes. And what would happen is I would set the shutter to 1/60th, I would adjust the f-stop, and depending on what I was trying to do, whether it be f11, and I'm shooting with f11 right now, so you guys can get a better idea of detail. 5/6, that shouldn't really matter, but then I locked the ISO, and I did a test to make sure I got the right ISO, and it would always start off okay, but then it would start to overexpose. And what I've learned today, and a very, very valuable lesson is, you can only lock down so much, and eventually something has to give. It's like a dam. You can fill up that dam, but if water keeps coming in faster and faster, eventually it's going to go over the top and the dam's going to break. So what you have to do is you have to either stop the water coming into the catch basin, or you have to let water leak out, more water leak out through a catchway or some other device to keep the water level. So yes, there's certain things you might have like ISO or like the f-stop that you lock down because you want a certain look, or you can lock down the shutter for a certain look. But there's only so much you can lock down. And when I lock down the ISO, that let the exposure move. So what I did this time is I locked down the ISO so I can keep, or sorry, I let the ISO float, but I locked down the exposure. And yeah, it's a valuable lesson. So here, even though the lighting's much more extreme and I can feel the sun hitting my eyeball right now, from what I can see down here in Camera Connect, and again, I'm looking through log here. Yes, it's a little bright on the side of my face, but overall, it looks like this is going to grade quite nicely. And so that's my huge lesson learned to you. I put out a video yesterday on a tutorial about how to shoot manual, and it would have been a great caveat to put in that video that be careful how much you lock down, because if you think you're locking everything down, you're not. There's always going to be something that's going to float. And even the camera, it says, if you try to adjust the exposure, it'll say, yeah, no, I'm sorry, I can't do that because you've locked the ISO and I need the ISO to float if you want me to lock the exposure or adjust the exposure. So a very, very valuable lesson learned. I think we're going to see much better Q&A videos, but you shouldn't be surprised. I am the ordinary filmmaker, or to use a better, what's the word, article, to use a better word, article, I am an ordinary filmmaker. You're an ordinary filmmaker. We all are. Yes, I know some of you watching are professionals, like Frosty. Frosty's a very intelligent guy. He has lots of cameras. He does lots of filming, but I think most of my viewers are ordinary filmmakers. You're learning along with me. There aren't a lot of videos on this stuff out there. Anything you search on Aperture or these things, they're either related to video of other cameras or they don't get into the detail related to the R5. And it took me, again, reading the manual, but from a different point of view, knowing that it's not metering because there's no real way to control metering. So I figured there's got to be some sort of exposure setting. And that's how I found this. So thanks so much for watching The Ordinary Filmmaker. I appreciate your patronage. I wish you all a very, very good week. My channel is going to change and grow over the next couple of months, and that really depends on what news is coming out, what products is coming out. But it also depends on the type of questions and comments you ask me. This video wouldn't be possible without your comments. You do have a say in how this channel works. Just last week, somebody said to me, you should name this video this because that's really what it's about. I thought about it, ignored it, went down and answered a few more questions, and came back to the top and saw the comment again. I thought, you know, he's right. So I changed it, wrote back to him and said, good point, I changed it. And you know what he said? He said, awesome, subscribed. And I think what a lot of people want, they just want to be heard, they want to be listened to. And I actually have more comments now than I know how to deal with. I can't answer everybody, but I do read, I do skim through, and I do my best to listen to what you have to say. And if you really want to be heard, be some of the first to respond, because once I publish a video, I usually pay attention to at least the first hour, if not the first 4 hours. But after it goes past a day, or especially after I've published a new video, I really focus on that because it's just impossible. I'm only a one-man show. It's me only. Although my wife helped me move these plants around because I couldn't have done it myself. But thanks again. Thank you for watching The Ordinary Filmmaker. We'll see you again soon.